sent down to the oil fields.
From the drone or separately?
No, separately. That's what they are saying. That's what.
Oh, okay. I hadn't heard that.
What they were saying is that they have information that the what is that, guards, royal guards or mujahideen guards in Iran, whatever that's called.
Oh, they
some guards,
revolutionary guards.
Revolutionary guards. They were seen, or they have intelligence that they were.
Okay, you're live.
They were planning, or they sent the missiles. They were seen, or they were observed doing something to fire the missiles. Some kind of intelligence they have that. But that's what Saudi Arabian people say.
Right.
But how good is their intelligence? I don't know. Or you can just go like this anytime.
Why don't you introduce what we're
good evening. We're talking when we came on air about what's going on with Iran and some of the intelligence or facts that we've been able to pick up excuse me, from news, and we're probably going to continue on to the discussion to talk about what it is we would like to see done, or better, more likely, what it is we think is likely to happen as a result of what appears right now is that the administration has decided that Iran fired, I thought it was armed drones. Omanan was just saying that he heard that it was cruise missiles. Drones were probably up there as a guidance mechanism. Then what happens? And if in fact we do X, Y, or Z, what do the Iranians do and their allies? So that's kind of a summary of where we are right now.
Yes. Well, at this time, you also have to look at that Secretary Pompeo has gone to the Middle East to reinforce or reactivate the bloc they created with Saudi Arabia and Israel and maybe Lebanon. Not Lebanon. The Qatar or some such that group. And maybe that's what they are going to have. They will confer and maybe come up with a plan. And I would suspect that they would have some kind of retaliatory measures in place, because Saudi Arabia, whether United States likes it or not, Saudi Arabia does not like Iran. They don't like Iranians. They don't like the existence of Iran, period. Right. So they would like to essentially drive them out into the Persian Gulf, I would imagine.
And I'm sure they'd be happy about that. But in the oil section of Saudi Arabia are mostly Shiites.
There are Shiites,
and
yes.
If there was an open attack on Iran, what would these people do? And oh, by the way, probably they would sabotage the oil.
Well, at this time, whatever I know is that the Shia population in Saudi Arabia live kind of under the radar. They, as long as they don't create waves, they're okay. And that's kind of interesting thing too. That means essentially they are second-class citizens. So they could sabotage, but they keep low profile.
Yeah, I would not be surprised if a lot of the oil workers, those who are not foreign-born, are Shiite.
Probably,
which most importantly means they know what to do.
They know what to do.
As opposed
so
to
it brings up the larger question for me, with everything going on around the world, where are we headed? If you talk to people, no one wants to go into another war. So how are we able to work and try to continue or develop a relationship with others and try to come up with some respect for those that we haven't had respect in the past? Because another war is something that I don't look forward to.
Particularly against a country that can fight back.
Yes.
I think, personally, that Trump doesn't want a war. He likes to talk tough.
I mean, that's what he also said, that he also does not like a war.
Right.
But he might play into the club and have a proxy war, which is going on in Yemen at the moment.
Right.
And so that might escalate and include Iran in explicit way.
Well, to have a proxy war that involves Iran directly, you need to have some other player.
Yes.
I don't know what groups are in Iran other than possibly the Kurds, and I don't think there are enough Kurds to make a difference. So how do you start hurting them? In the United States, it'd be really simple. You just foment some group, left, right, whatever, and convince them that they have to start doing something because otherwise something bad will happen. And you can create that. Is there such a group in Iran?
Well, there is. If you look at the way there were the liberal groups in Iran who wanted Western support, and that was they were crushed. And if they are still alive, and if U.S. has leverage with them, then they could create trouble. But they unfortunately, given that we have the history, even during Obama administration, there was not a lot of attention paid to them. And so they probably do not have that much wherewithal to do any of it. But they could be rearmed and reorganized, and next thing you know, they could do something.
There wasn't an armed fight.
No, it was not.
But actually, we did accomplish something for them. We got rid of Ahmadinejad, and we got what, for Iran, was a moderate. And that was part and parcel of the Iranian arms deal, improving the life of the average Iranian. It was a pretty good deal, and then we threw it all away. Well, partly we threw it away, and partly oil prices stayed down, and people weren't able to get as much as they thought they were going to get out of it.
I mean, the good thing out of all that, what came out is the Iran nuclear deal.
Yeah,
and that was also made possible because of the kind of, in a way, support for the moderates. And as you said, that we have basically squandered that part and basically strengthened the hand of the essentially the people who cannot be molded, who cannot be bent. They are out gung ho. That's what the foreign minister says. We will wage a war to the end. I mean, that's not easy.
Let's pretend for the moment that Iran had nothing to do with this, or nothing directly to do with this. And now we've pointed a finger and said, you did it, and we have to do something in retaliation. So now these people are saying, I did nothing. If you do this, I now have to do something, and maybe I can get away with doing it covertly and have some poor schlub in New York City blow themselves up. Or maybe I have to do it overtly to satisfy my people. And the net result is escalation. People are forced to take sides. I think you suggested World War I earlier. That's exactly what happened in World War I. Somebody did a bad thing, assassinated the heir apparent. Austria felt they had to do something. They made unreasonable demands, on governments that could either buckle under and become owned by Austria again, or fight back. France was having a wonderful time during this period because they wanted to get Germany involved so that they could beat Germany because the Franco-Prussian War didn't go the way they wanted. It it ultimately involved all of the Western world.
I get concerned about where one is headed. In speaking with a person, as I am a retired person, working with our veterans as a nurse, and our veterans are the people who receive the outcome of what is determined at a higher level. Now, that part is a good thing, but we absolutely have to make sure that we do not take our country down the road to war unless there is a need. One can get together and discuss issues, but unless there's a need, because I care a great deal about our veterans and future veterans, for that matter.
I mean that's a very important point, actually. That as you were pointed out earlier, wars are good as long as it's not my kid.
Right.
And so you can fight as much as you like, but once my kid gets involved, I have my skin in the game.
Right.
And that's
and you
good.
may still say the war is right, but it's a different commitment.
It's a different commitment. But what worries me, as Paul pointed out earlier, because there is this ambiguity at the moment. Did it actually come, as you pointed out, did it really come from Iran, or did it come from some other country? So at this time, I feel that United States may feel, as you said, may feel kind of obligated, and because they will be kind of they are probably negotiating with Saudi Arabia, and in those negotiations, I don't know what is happening, and they might be pushed to do something, which might actually bring all the other countries take sides, and we have a problem.
What about the possibility? Let me just throw out something. I have no, other than just having it make political sense. If Saudi Arabia is telling Pompeo, calm down.
That's possible.
Calm down. Don't do anything stupid, because if that happens, then the Shiites in the northeast kind of forced to take sides, and we don't want that. So it would almost be somebody who would be benefiting from this kind of a war. That's why I was thinking Al-Qaeda. Hey, I drop a couple of bombs, and all the people I hate start fighting with each other.
I mean, you also have to, that brings up the point, actually, because a few days ago, I think it was President Trump who actually announced that Osama bin Laden's son was killed. And maybe this is part of this retaliation through, because
I hadn't thought about that.
I mean, because Al-Qaeda is not dead.
Right.
And because once you cut the one head, several others show up. And it might be that they are trying to say, well, here is the payback, and we hit you at the place where it hurts. And now let us see what you do. So that's this is the other piece to that.
Right.
So,
and Al-Qaeda, as well as ISIS, have technical people who, if they could get a hold of the equipment, would be able to hit a relatively large target.
I mean, look at the war in Afghanistan. We have been there for more than 18 years now.
Yeah.
In the current version.
In the current version.
Yeah.
But what is happening is every day there are about 40 people killed, and including U.S. Servicemen. And so, what are we doing about that? And that's again, what is the strategy? Which although we say, well, we got to have a strategy. We need to pull out, and we need to talk to Taliban, but the undercurrent is still there, that the Taliban as a proxy for Al-Qaeda, it's still working.
Well, we could do what we did in Vietnam, which is declare victory, say, we're leaving in 6 months, don't do anything that makes us change our minds. And well, it wasn't the Viet Cong at this point, the
No,
North Vietnamese
North Vietnamese.
let things go for about a year. And then they basically said, okay, we're taking over now. And the South Vietnamese army melted away, disappeared. It was almost a bloodless victory.
And now you have Vietnam, and which is friendly to United States.
Right, which I find really amazing.
Yeah, you have something to say.
Well, I'm just kind of listening. I see us doing something stupid. The stupidest thing that we could do is to declare war with Iran, whether they did it or not. And I think once we do that, it will bring in a whole bunch of other countries into it. The entire Middle East will be up in, all fighting each other.
Yes.
And when we get involved, we'll probably bring in NATO,
NATO,
the NATO countries.
Yeah.
And I see it as a complete disaster. And even worse, I see the Christian fundamentalists, dominionists in our country, believing this is the Armageddon and the second coming of Christ will be soon, and a lot of the decision makers are of that opinion.
The Force Horsemen and all that stuff.
Well, not necessarily. What's described in the Bible, because that's just somebody's musings.
Okay.
But at some point there will be an end to the world universe. I don't know. Maybe it's 5 years away. Maybe it's 300 centuries. Maybe it's 3 million years. Who knows? 10 million years. But there's a significant number of people believe it's around the corner, which is really troubling to me.
Well, there's another, I'm going to be take the other side for the moment. If we do nothing, if we say we don't know what happened, and if we go and bomb Iran, then Iran's going to fight back, and maybe it will be nasty. If we do nothing, we're essentially saying to someone, whether it be Iran or somebody else, I can do anything I want. Because they aren't going to do anything. They're going to try to starve the people who live down the street from me, but I got my own sources of food, so I'm fine. Because I know it's coming, so I've been storing it and making my arrangements, and I got away with it.
In that scenario, what Pompeo and the rest of the intelligence community have to do is not just only listen to Saudi Arabia, but gather more intelligence to really pinpoint where the problem has arisen, and then go after them, rather than just go willy-nilly on.
And do it not by yourself.
No.
I mean, what happens if Europe says, no, this is crazy. We're not going to do that. And now we're there all by ourselves. And we can't fight a war that far away by ourselves.
Yeah, the thing that bothers me is that I believe that Trump is impulsive. He doesn't think ahead. I've made the chess analogy that I don't believe that Trump is capable of playing chess, because if you play chess, you have to think 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 moves ahead, and he doesn't seem to have that capability of thinking, if I do this, what will they do? And if they do A, what will my reaction be? If they do B, what will my reaction be?
I will blame somebody else. That's he thinks far enough ahead to know that if something doesn't work out the way he thinks he wants it to work out now, as opposed to yesterday or tomorrow, but right now, I blame somebody else.
So, I mean, we can see that with the tariffs. He didn't understand. He didn't understand what he was doing. He created a major problem, and lots of people are going to lose jobs. We're headed towards a recession, and you know, it's just having a person with sub-average intelligence in a position, the most powerful position in the world, is. I believe he has sub-average intelligence, according to my belief.
But as a democracy, we put this person in power.
And we can take him out.
Yeah, we can take it, but
by not that way, but by impeachment.
Okay, but I think that the guy doesn't think things through. I agree with you. But my big problem is he decides something and he thinks it's going to happen the way he kind of thinks it's going to happen without understanding the steps necessary. For example, you're talking about tariffs. You want to get into a fight with China over tariffs? Maybe it's a good thing. I mean, they're doing some stuff, which I'm sure we've done as well, but that's neither here nor there. They're doing some stuff we don't like. And so we're fighting with them in an economic sense. Okay, fine. But the one thing you have to understand is we may be the biggest single market for a lot of goods, but there are a ton of other markets out there.
Yeah.
And if you alienate those people so that they're now predisposed to take advantage of whatever you're giving up, you've essentially cut off your nose to spite your face. And China may be somewhat down, but they're not out.
No.
I mean,
and we're likely to be.
I mean, there are more than 6.5 billion people who are still as a big market for
Yeah, but they don't
China.
have, right now they don't have the money.
They don't have that much money.
The market is not only number of people,
it's
but the
money.
dollars to spend.
I mean, just going back to what Paul talked about, you have the lobster fishermen here.
Yeah.
They lose millions of dollars every week because their market has been closed.
As an example, the soybean issue. We have soybeans rotting in warehouses. Brazil sees a big opportunity for growing soybeans.
Oh.
So they decided we can grow soybeans, we can grow cattle. So they're burning down the source of oxygen for the
Whole world.
for the world.
By the way, my daughter did a documentary on Brazil, and it turns out a lot of these farmers are from the Midwest. And when we started using corn to substitute for oil, because at one time we thought we needed it, they went down to Brazil and they started farming down there. And part of what they're doing is they're burning down many, many acres so that they can do stuff. And yeah, they're going to start. When we were making a lot of money selling soybeans to China, China stopped buying from us, so they'll buy from somebody else. The Ukraine and Brazil are going to become the breadbasket of the world, as opposed to the American Midwest.
So Brazil does not have the embargo, right? They don't come into that picture. Because U.S. has the sanctions against Iran, and so U.S. can punish anybody. So
in theory,
yeah. But in practice also, because they're telling everybody you don't buy. If you bought this, we'll do this, and the other.
But there are always exceptions, either because we gave them an exemption, which we've done, or because we turn a blind eye and we say, I didn't see that.
Oh. Because no, actually, some of the exemptions they had given are gone now.
Some of in Europe.
What I was thinking about the Brazilians, if they are selling stuff to China, don't they get punished through U.S. or no?
No.
Well,
Well,
the Brazilians aren't selling to us. They're not buying.
They're selling directly.
They're selling to Europe. They're selling to Japan. And Europe and Japan, if that's where they're getting their food, have a vested interest in protecting these people.
Yeah. What I actually don't care about the soybeans. I care about the Amazon forest and the supply of oxygen and and that is the major disaster, ecologically speaking.
So you are saying the long-term effect of this would be loss of oxygen for everybody.
Loss of oxygen, increased carbon, increase a faster increase in global warming.
Well, that's it.
And that's not good.
No.
Well, let me throw another idea at you. We supposedly understand photosynthesis and how plants work, etc. What's to stop us from saying, okay, we don't have the Amazon forest anymore. Let's start having chemical plants that just take carbon, hydrogen, water, and a few other things, and create the oxygen. And oh, by the way, while we're at it, we'll make things that people can eat. So we don't need the farms anymore.
Well, the eat part is easier. Actually, people do photosynthesis as well. I mean, there are plants that people set up to trap carbon dioxide, and then they sell you these smoothie drinks and all that stuff. So that
well, what I wanted to do was create hydrocarbons.
That's also people are doing, but not at the scale fossil fuels are providing.
But why, if the Amazon forest isn't there anymore, and people insist that for some reason or another, I don't understand why, that I cut my lawn so that it doesn't create as much oxygen as it did in the past, then there's a business out there.
There is a business.
There's a wonderful, wonderful business that you can actually be creating hydrocarbons, and then someone a little further down the road figures out how to put those together so they taste like a steak or like milk or
you have
ice cream.
You remember there was a guy named T. Boone Pickens.
Yes.
The big oil magnate.
Yes.
His later years were spent on investigating and developing renewable resources. So, but how far he went, I don't know. He died recently.
The Amazon forest is about the size of the Midwest.
Yes.
So, I mean, do you want to unpopulate the Midwest to do this?
No, I'm saying
it's it's only 100 million people.
It doesn't matter what happens in this world. Somebody's going to benefit. Somebody's going to be harmed. Short term, long term. If we take this as an opportunity, I would much prefer that the Amazon forest remain down there and take care of all the stuff. And if we could ship all the insects down there, I'd be even happier. But
along with the bees, so we can't grow anything.
Well, yeah.
But you can actually collect all those insects and they fry them, they eat them.
Well, after we no longer have oxygen, I wonder how many of those are going to be around.
Well, that's a difficult problem.
Okay. But if we take this as an opportunity, suddenly there's a market. I need hydrocarbons, and I want the output to be oxygen. I'm sure that there's somebody, if I can think it, somebody can solve it.
I'm sure people are doing that.
Yeah, and we know that we can replicate photosynthesis.
You can do that.
So, which is the key problem. How do you get the energy to combine all this stuff? Well, a sunny day, you put up a black shield, and you collect energy, and then you put it into the solution.
As Paul pointed out, it's a question of scale.
Yeah.
So if you can scale it up like that, just like have the whole Midwest become like Amazon forest, then you are all in business. Yeah.
Right now, Arizona is potentially one huge solar farm. And you can believe it or not, but a few years ago, probably 6-7 years ago, I was driving from Vegas to Phoenix, and I went through areas that were just solar panels.
Oh, so that's good.
And why can't we do New Mexico as well? I mean, there's not a hell of a lot else you can do with that area, but suddenly you take something that's otherwise dead and you make it an energy farm.
I mean, that's what Google didn't Google set up a energy farm I forgot where.
I don't know.
They have set up one place where they generate electricity electricity by using the solar panels. Huge farm.
Now we, in this country, we identify problems, but we don't go far enough in resolving and solving the problems. For example, I really believe that our focus, one of our focus now, should be to try to get the immigrants issue resolved. This is going on and on and on. And some people are seen as people that we would like to come here, and then the others are seen as someone we don't want to come here. Why don't we get that issue resolved?
Well, let me address the 2 points. I got to say 2 points. One is I disagree that this country creates problems but has no solutions, because you have this country does provide a lot of solutions to various problems. That's number one.
Okay.
Number two,
Solutions. Okay.
solutions.
Okay.
But the problem of immigration has been there forever, and you have had solutions, you have had bad solutions, good solutions, and in between.
Where are we now?
I think it's a lingering problem, and depends on who the person is in the chair. They're going to either keep it alive, and it's going to stay alive because the person has to get re-elected in 2020. So that is a solution for the person, because as long as the problem stays alive and hot, I vote for him. I mean, that's it. I mean, that's what happens. So whether it's not actually, to me, it is not really the immigration problem. It's a question of how do you create an impression that there is a problem. Whether there is a problem or not, as long as I can create an impression and impress upon people there is a problem, and provide a solution that is convenient, people vote for me. That's all I got to say.
No matter how repulsive.
So that's different. That part is different.
Right. But again, immigration by its very nature has been in existence as long as Homo sapiens, go back further. As long as life has existed, groups of beings at whatever level go from one place to another. As much as anything else, they go for food. We have documentation. If you look at the Bible, Abraham left Ur and migrated to Egypt, and then he migrated back, etc. Rome had wave upon wave of immigrants coming in, some who cooperated, some who conquered. China, for 3,000 years that we're aware of, maybe longer, has had the same kind of thing. It is the nature of life.
I mean, the whole story of out of Africa is immigration story.
Well, out of Africa.
Well, you see, nobody believes that.
Oh.
No, out of Africa.
Yeah. I mean, that's the origin.
We didn't want to come here.
No. I'm talking
a few billion years before that happened.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. The whole story of out of Africa for people as human beings, Homo sapiens, is an immigrant story, actually.
Yeah.
Okay.
Lucy, starting with Lucy.
Yeah, starting with Lucy.
Turns out Lucy's not the first.
There's somebody else actually now.
How do they correlate the emigration from Africa, and how do they correlate that with the Cro-Magnons and the Neanderthals?
This
It
is
came
all.
at different times.
You mean
it's all based on
long
DNA
before?
analysis, actually.
No.
Now you mean?
There have been various species of
Humans.
for lack of anything better, we call humans. Most of which have died out. Many of which were integrated into what today is you and I.
Yes.
The Neanderthals didn't die out all by themselves. They
Intermingled.
intermingled.
Yeah, but so did everyone actually originate? In theory, everyone actually originate in Africa, or
As far as we
No.
know.
did some originate?
I question, I would think China might have had their own species, but I don't know that.
No, actually, what
Yeah.
people have said is that Neanderthals were somewhere in Europe, somewhere place. But the controversy is that did these people who originated who were seen in Europe by the people who were migrating out of Africa, did the Neanderthals migrate out of Africa earlier, or did they originate right there? So that part is
That's my
not
question.
very clear.
Well, everything I've heard,
Yes.
and I'm not an expert in
I
this,
mean, I don't
but
know
everything
either. I
I've
mean,
heard
I'm not an
is
anthropologist.
that in the Congo area, for lack of anything better, I'm just arbitrarily picking
Kenya.
a place. Kenya. Some of the species of ape began to develop some of the characteristics that we call human. And they stayed there a while, and then for reasons that nobody has come up with, they began to expand. And in large measure expanded north. The ones who went north seemed to do better than the ones who went south. But there's a constant evolution of things going on, and the group that went maybe 500,000 years later, another group went.
That's what
And
people
they
say.
were probably a little better because they were able to overcome the ones who had gone to Europe or wherever it was that they went.
And we got
Yeah.
the group that was sent here to this country as slaves.
But they were real humans.
Well,
they were, I mean,
that's the problem. We have to accept, and I'm going to try to be serious right now, that we're all real humans.
Yes.
Because the moment where somebody isn't as real as the other guy, then you can do whatever you want to them because they're not human.
I mean, the colonial thinking was that colonial powers discovered areas. I mean, what was there to discover? But that was the thinking, and that was the cultural. That's how anthropology also worked like that. So that you went somewhere and discovered. I mean, you look at people. You had this. Was he Admiral Perry or?
Went to Japan.
Went to North Pole.
North Pole.
There
Perry.
was
And
another Perry.
Admiral Perry, right? No?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he went up there. He went with some of the African Americans from here. They all went there and they married there. And they said they discovered North Pole, and then they discovered Eskimos. And they also married there, and Perry had children, and the African Americans had children who are now they're black Eskimos up there. And actually it's a huge story. Actually, one of my acquaintances, he was very much instrumental in going up there and bringing them down, and it's kind of interesting. But the bottom line there is that you do have the question of the colonial thinking that you just go out and discover places, and as long as you discover them, other peoples are just savages, and those are to be. That is what the discoverers will decide. As you pointed out, are they human or are they subhuman? Most of the time they are subhuman, and they were supposed to be subhuman because only the people who discovered them were intellectuals, were people who knew things. But one thing I still want to say, that you have to give them credit that at least they went out of their way to find the places.
Well, sometimes they went out of their way, and sometimes they just stumbled on things.
Well, of course, along the
Yeah.
way they stumbled and
Right.
they called it discovery.
And some of these savages that they encountered were more powerful than they were,
Yes.
and a variety of different ways they overcame it. They lied, they cheated, they made sure that people got sick.
Yes, of course.
That's what happened in South America.
Yeah.
In Africa, they were wonderful civilizations, particularly in the Ethiopia, Sudan area, Egypt.
Egypt. Yeah.
And they were overcome over time by better technology.
That technology did kill a
Yeah.
lot of people.
So it wasn't even necessarily savages. You're a savage if I can beat you.
I mean, it's what comes to my mind. Well, I just digress here for a minute. What you brought up is that out of Africa, in India, we had the what is called the Mughal period. They were Islamic rulers. They brought people from Africa as warriors. Not only warriors, some of them they brought as slaves, because it's kind of Arab trade things. That's what they did. Now, some of those people who came from Africa, because they were in the military, they became generals, and there are few actually owned huge areas and declared themselves to be the kings of that area. Actually, there is still a huge castle in Western India that belonged to one of the African rulers, and I forgot the name of the guy. And they were actually recognized during the British rule as one of the principalities where their ruler was African, which was kind of interesting.
Was that before Alexander or after?
This is after.
After.
This is after. I mean, this is during British rule. Just like in India, even during what we call the British rule, there were more than 500 independent rajas or maharajas, or essentially feudal kings, and one of them was an African guy there. And I mean, one was African on the west coast, there was another one on the east coast, but I don't know whether the east coast one was recognized or not, but the west one was.
Yeah.
But at the same time, but I still keep on that argument that as long as people from the West went and so-called discovered with that colonial thinking, so everybody else was just savage and no good. But that's where we were. I mean, and that has gone into a lot of thinking.
Well, when China became savages,
Yes.
You have to start thinking about what happened.
They didn't like us to trade opium there, so naturally they are savages. They were savages.
Well, it got in the way of making a buck.
Yes.
Everybody's got to be able to make a buck.
I mean, look at that. That's another historical fact there, that you could create a war just because you want it.
Yeah, right.
I mean, otherwise, what was the rationale? It was just because they didn't like opium to be brought in, but Britishers wanted big sales, send opium, grow it in India and sell it there. It's interesting. And they had to create a port system, create a market, and Chinese didn't like it.
So where are we today?
Ask Paul. He has the answers.
We're contemplating Iran. And just so long as we contemplate it, that'll be okay.
We're
As
contemplating.
long as we don't do anything.
Well, actually, I remember, and this is a week or two ago, so the world has changed markedly since then. At one point, Trump, rather than having a war with Iran, wanted to sit down with the leaders. And I think he's a little foolish. He wanted to sit down with the president of Iran rather than Khomeini, who's actually the one in charge. But one of the things he was thinking of doing was, look, go back, get rid of your nuclear stuff,
I see.
and we'll get you credits, all this $150 billion worth of credits. And it occurred to me, we're going to pay twice for the Iranian deal. First, we're going to give Iran back the money that we were holding that was theirs. everybody's goes hysterical about. And then we're going to pay him again.
Yeah.
So is that was a plan? I didn't know that.
That was something that was floated.
I see.
So does that mean we have a tax increase for the citizens of this country?
No, we just print the money.
No, Mexico will pay for it.
Okay.
I see. Mexico.
So by the way, I don't know whether is the wall being built now or no.
The replacements are.
There is a photo op with Trump signing one of the one of those things.
Planks.
Yeah. No. He's signing one of the big steel things.
Oh, I see.
That make up
Girders.
the wall. Apparently, he said, he's giving the impression these are new things.
I see.
Yeah.
It's something that was repaired.
I see. Okay.
Well, what they put up is a replacement. I mean, it's not new. There was a fence there before. It got old, and they put up something new, but it is different. He was describing how wonderful it was, and I was going to do this, that, and the other thing. And then he wanted to talk about the technology inside, and the general suggested this is probably not a good time to do that. And Trump actually thought for a second, yeah, you're right. But Trump is like a little kid. I know something you don't know. I'm going to tell you something you don't know because I'm special. And that's how he gets into a lot of trouble.
Just remember that we elected your president here.
Unfortunately, it's our president.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're here, and he's the president.
He is the El Presidente. I keep on saying that. I mean, he is our president. We like it or not, that's different, sure. But he is responsible for taking the country forward, maybe in a certain direction, whatever direction he chooses, based on his advisors, and I hope it is the right direction.
Well, he tells the advisors what to say.
Okay. Well,
That's become the new norm.
I mean, that's
he's taking it forward, but maybe not in a direction that's beneficial to the country.
well, that's a problem. And that's why actually what I was pointing out.
Because wherever you go is forward.
Yeah.
You don't go backwards. You may go off in a different direction.
Well, you can't go backwards if you follow the path that you were on before.
Yes.
But going in the opposite direction. That's
Going the wrong way. I mean.
Long way, right way.
Yeah.
That's up to debate. But certainly, if I walk through that door, and then I turn around and come back and sit down, I've gone backwards.
That's what these lobster fishermen were complaining actually, that they're losing money every day and they cannot find alternative markets because China was their huge market. And I don't know what they do. I didn't hear this part. What do they do to their lobsters? Are lobsters being sold cheaply now, or is that because they're rotting?
I don't eat lobsters.
Yes,
So
I don't
can't
either,
tell
but
you.
I was wondering.
Yeah.
What do they do with the lobsters?
Yeah.
They're restricted on the number they can catch.
But they were saying that they their huge market is gone.
Well, the market is gone because they're restricted to the number that they can catch.
I see. Okay.
And that goes with many different species of fish. Probably cod and haddock and that kind of stuff.
Well, being restricted and actually following the restrictions are two different things. If you can't sell it, there's less incentive to go and catch more. Now, if you could sell it for a lower price, then you want to get more and more to try to make up your income. But if you can't sell it at all, stay home.
Yeah, they're restricted on the number that they can catch.
Because they were saying that a lot of people are going to lose their jobs there because they can't keep people anymore because they can't harvest, they can't sell, and that's the end of that.
Well, the same thing is happening in the Midwest. They have all this stuff that they decide 6 months in advance that they're going to plant. And when they're done, assuming that it hasn't been flooded out, which is happening in many cases. They can't sell it, so what happens is Trump, in his infinite generosity, gives your money to those farmers, not to the farm, but to the farm owners, so that they will not get hurt. But the poor schlub who is driving the tractor
does not get anything.
he may get unemployment for a while. May.
The other thing is that a lot of those big farms are owned by people in Brazil.
Oh, I see.
So
Okay.
he's basically giving money to Brazilians.
I see.
Well, actually, most of the big farms are owned by Monsanto and groups
Well,
like that.
But there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
There's-
Some of the more successful family farms do have relatives in Brazil.
So does that mean they are also the large corporations? They're not no longer are the family farms.
No, the vast
Family
majority of
they're
farming
disappearing.
today is done by major corporations.
Because there was a documentary about a farmer on PBS, I think. The father was talking about how he does not expect his son to follow him, because he was saying that he was happy that his son decided not to be a farmer, because otherwise he would starve, something like that, he said. So I was kind of shocked that this is so bad that this thing is happening.
But our government, in its infinite wisdom, passes laws and gives a tremendous amount of tax money and benefits to the farmers to help the family farmer. And that money goes to Monsanto and other beneficiaries of corporate welfare, because the family farmer doesn't exist anymore. I mean, much of our country is built on the concept that people out in the rural areas farming, and it ain't true anymore. The number of the states that we have were set up because of the farms.
Yeah, I mean that was the whole plan. That side.
Right. And as England learned in the 1700s, rotten boroughs make things very difficult to help everybody else, because you got this area where there's one guy who owns everything, and he's boss,
He's the boss.
and everything that he votes for benefits him.
That's
Which, by the way, makes sense if you think about it, because the whole idea of capitalism and democracy is enlightened self-interest.
So in that sense, then if you think of democracy and think of capitalism, in an ideal situation would be that the overall benefit would trickle down to the worker, and that's where the socialist system comes in, to somehow make sure that benefits trickle down, which is not always
not so
the
much
case.
trickle down, but that the worker becomes part of the process, as opposed to just running around underneath the table picking up scraps.
I mean that's where the socialist system or the union system comes up, that they ensure that the worker gets the due share.
Yeah, that it's not just one poor guy who can easily be replaced, but it's the whole group says we want a piece. Something I've been saying recently, and I think you were saying it as well the other day, Christianity is socialism. Everybody's responsible for everybody else.
The neighbor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but everybody's your
but
neighbor.
The definition of neighbor is everybody.
Everybody.
else.
Yeah.
Not just
Not just
the people in your town, but it's everybody else.
I mean that would be ideal, but does that really play actually, or is it only a concept?
Well, it's a concept.
it's a concept.
There are nations in this world that operates somewhat on a socialist model. Look at Scandinavia, look at Israel, the two that come to mind, areas that come to mind to me.
Well,
To some extent, the United States used to be.
I wouldn't say Israel.
Why?
I don't think Israel considers the
Well,
the West Bank their neighbors.
West Bank is,
I mean,
Isn't that
is
separate?
an
West Bank
other.
is separate. Is
Yeah,
that that's
they
separate?
occupy it,
Yeah.
but they don't. There's a debate as to whether to make it part of Israel or not.
well, I guess no. I didn't mean the West Bank. I meant
The Arab population,
yeah,
which is about
Palestine.
20% of the Israeli population. Yeah, they ideally, if you look at the ideals, the Arab population was considered Israeli. That has eroded over time, if it ever was really true. But now it's more of that's the other.
Oh,
Yeah.
so
And that's got to stop, because as long as they're the other, then you're constantly fighting among yourselves as opposed to presenting a united front.
so does that mean within Israel itself you have two levels of citizenship or no?
The
It's not
Arabs-
spelled out.
The Arab population is theoretically full citizen, but for example, they're not drafted.
Oh, they're not drafted.
No, they're not drafted.
Wow.
There are some other limitations, but they are Arab representatives in the Knesset,
Knesset.
full voting representatives. If Labor wins, or the centrist party, not Labor anymore, but the centrist party wins in the current election, they probably will become part of the coalition
Oh, okay.
and there would be a massive change in how Israel faces its neighbors.
But does that mean having the Palestinian members in parliament would help the Palestinian population in regaining their rights whatever they need?
Well, you run into a problem.
Okay.
If there is a large group of Palestinians who've been living in displaced person camps for 60 years
Wow.
and have been told that their rightful home is in Israel, and if given the opportunity, if the Arab nations take over Israel, they will be restored and the Jews will be kicked out. When you have debates about what do you do, how do you deal with it, it's very difficult to compromise with people whose idea is that you should not exist.
That's a very
Yes.
difficult situation.
Yeah.
actually.
Yes.
Not difficult, it's untenable.
Kashmir probably
it's the
deals
same-
in a somewhat
it's-
similar
It
situation.
is the same similar problem,
Yeah.
yes.
So the
It is so
the right
complicated.
way for Israel, whether it's the right way for anybody else, the right way for Israel itself, is to set up a Palestinian state and give the Arab population the opportunity to move to that state, which would be a head start for the Palestinian state, because you get now educated, technically proficient people, but then you stick them in an area where they can't grow enough food.
Yes, there's not.
So there's, but
it's a very difficult situation.
Yeah.
But I mean, these are real human problems actually, and practical problems.
and practical, and there is no good answer for someone just looking from the outside.
I mean,
Somebody on the inside, I mean, sure,
Yeah.
get him out, get him out,
Yeah.
and everything's fine. But for somebody looking on the outside, that doesn't work.
No, but what I find also sad is that when there was when Israel was created, all the Arabs invaded, and at that time you had this. You created the Palestinian refugee problem, and at that time all the Arab countries who took in the Arabs, they kept them in camps.
Yes.
They have not let them get integrated, so that that problem is is essentially perpetual problem. They
It's
are not considered as citizens of any of the places.
It is, well, as I was describing a moment ago, the attitude is you're just here temporarily. By the way, don't want to have anything to do with you, but you're just here temporarily, and if you go back, you'll get it all.
Yeah.
So all the roads from the camps into the main part of the country are mined.
Oh, wow.